Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Society Pod. My guest today is an entrepreneur, a trailblazer in the wellness and recovery space. He's also a mental health advocate, a mountain bike enthusiast. He's from Abington, Pennsylvania, right down the road from me, and he's a girl dad. So we're going to have a ton of things to talk about today. Welcome to the show, Andrew Lachlan.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really appreciate you having me on today. No one has introduced me from my hometown before. Shout out to Abington.
I am a Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania girl, so
Okay.
Abington is a close relative of mine. You're into so many different things. How do you normally introduce yourself?
Husband, dad of two daughters. I'm a business owner, I like to say. I like to be an operator. I very rarely would introduce myself as a CEO or Sauna House's founder, but that's now what a lot of people talk about me as. I'm a passionate well-being enthusiast. Why I say well-being, because it's like the mind and body is the connection we're talking about there in regards to well-being. So I am a lifestyle enthusiast, but truthfully now I work a lot and I love my company and I love my employees and my customers. So I feel very lucky that I get to do what I love every day.
It does make it easier when you work in what you love. You can kind of put in the hours and not get to a place of burnout. Would you say it's a recovery space, or how do you define the space that you play in?
Yeah, I call it a sauna bathing facility or a bathhouse. Recovery space would be a little bit probably more toward like restore hyper wellness or something in that vein. We definitely are a modern celebration of ancient bathing practices. It just so happens though that modern day science has shown us the benefits of sauna and cold therapy in a new way, and it's had a huge resurgence. I think that sauna bathing facilities and bathing facilities around the world have been incredible third places of society since the beginning of humanity. So we're really excited to bring them to the modern day life. I always say it's a great remedy for modern day stress and the technology overload.
Absolutely. The screen connectivity is crazy. There's so many different concepts that are popping up in the sauna, the cold plunge, recovery, maybe medical wellness kind of space. And it sounds like you're almost trying to create a space on your own. You know, you're kind of trying to trailblaze your own path. So what makes Sauna House unique in that it needs its own path?
I think the public bathing space is a little bit unique in the wellness space. Mostly you'll see kind of private wellness amenities, so a hyperbaric oxygen chamber or a float tank or an infrared sauna where you go in with maybe one friend, but it's a private room. So Sauna House's space is primarily made up of one huge public bathing area. And then we do have some private traditional saunas with their own cold plunges as well, which is really nice because sometimes different customers are craving different things. Like if you work in the service industry, for instance, and you talk for 12 hours a day, maybe you don't want to go into the public baths where conversation is much more vibrant and lively. Maybe you're needing a little bit of one-on-one conversation with a partner or a great friend. And so the private rooms are awesome for that.
So I'm coming into this conversation more from the boutique fitness space, but we always talk about community being a critical differentiator of the boutique fitness space versus like a big box space. As you're talking about Sauna House, it sounds like community and connection and disconnection from technology is really important to you guys.
Yeah, definitely. So we're a technology-free space and we track the amount of technology-free hours that we've created for society, which is like funny. Like you're like, wait, you're creating technology-free hours? Yeah, well, the average person who makes like above six figures is on a screen like 12 hours a day. The average American opens their cell phone once every 4 minutes for 16 waking hours. You know, people are worried about AI. I'm like, guys, we're living it already. And so I think it's really important to disconnect, and community is really important to me. Throughout history, tea houses, coffee houses, and bath houses are the common third places amongst society. And in Sauna House, what one could expect coming in is that we're kind of circuit driven. So we ask people to move through the space in a specific way while they're moving along that journey from check-in to showering to sauna bathing to rinsing to plunging to relaxing and repeating the process. You're meeting other people along the way. You're hearing conversations that other people are having. You're definitely really in society and very grounded in the present moment because there's no cell phones in the space.
I like that you can somewhat choose your own adventure. We always like to think about that in boutique is like make it accessible to anybody, but then allow the personal journey to come to life. I think COVID made that need for even just proximity to others even more important than it's ever been before. And you guys started before COVID, but you've really started to get some momentum post COVID. Do you think that that's an intentional overlapping kind of trend or need?
I think it's like a Venn diagram of many overlapping needs and trends. So from the boutique fitness world, we stay a little bit smaller than some of the bathing concepts and definitely bigger than others. We're 5 to 10,000 square feet, which maintains some of that boutique gym community vibe at that size. I'm not sure if it was COVID or just technology, or like I said, I think it's the combination of a lot of things, but we're in a loneliness epidemic. We're also in an era of media and governance where people don't know what's true and they're confused. The internet has created all kinds of little micro groups and ideologies that have fractured society in a way that I think has really left people feeling a bit confused and scared as to like, the number one question of life, what is it all for, right? People are unsure of that more than ever. I think it's really important that small communities of people continue to get together in the real world as a remedy to these challenges of distrust in government, distrust in institution, distrust in religions, distrust in everything, really, which is quite sad. But I think that people are left focusing on that the more they're on devices, because devices are programmed to show you things that make you feel scared, that make you feel compulsive, that make you feel uncomfortable, because that's how these devices work, and specifically social media in that realm. So the more we can get people together in the real world doing things that make them feel connected to others, the better for everybody.
If somebody's listening to this and they haven't gotten involved in contrast therapy, give us the rundown. Like, why should someone get involved in contrast therapy, and who's the right person to kind of start getting involved in contrast therapy?
Well, everybody's the right person. So we'll start there. Everybody should do it. Now, how much everybody should do it, I'm not sure yet. The science is still early, but regular use with sauna bathing has incredible proven long-term benefits for reduction in cardiovascular disease. But what is it? Contrast therapy is simply like heating up the body and then cooling down the body. And in that process, you have veins and arteries expanding to a point where oxygen is being perfused deeper into joint tissues and skin. And so it is a detoxing experience for your body. Your heart rate is climbing during the heating session. And then when you go into a cold water, your heart rate will plummet back down to resting heart rate or even below resting heart rate. And in the modern day world, we live at like 68 to 72 degrees. Believe it or not, we evolved as a species, and we have the capabilities to deal with hot temperatures and cold temperatures. And those systems that are inside of the body are being activated through contrast therapy. And if you think about veins and arteries as like a garden hose, if you increase the pressure, but the hose can't expand, you burst the hose. If pressure goes down and the hose can't shrink, then you also decrease pressure in the body and have different challenges. Expanding and contracting veins and arteries keeps them soft and supple, which reduces the risk of plaque buildup and strokes and all of those types of things. So depending on what your lifestyle is like, you might need to be doing contrast therapy more or less. People who are training 5 days a week, they're running 2 days a week, lifting weights 2 days a week, maybe doing yoga once a week. This is not someone who needs to be doing contrast therapy probably 5 or 6 days a week. You want to be mixing it in as a recovery tool, putting it in strategically. Depending on what your wellness goals are, you would really prescribe a different amount and timing of sauna or cold therapy. So to speak to that just quickly, If you're lifting weights to increase muscle mass, it's good to sauna directly after. That will increase your gains. It'll boost IGF-1 levels, and you'll gain more muscle mass. And you want to avoid cold after a heavy lifting session there's no real data, but I would say anywhere between 10 to 14 hours so that muscle protein synthesis can be done regrowing that muscle. Because if you get into cold water after you've broken down muscle fiber, it will just stop regrowing and you'll actually lose muscle mass. So that's a thing that a lot of people get wrong, is they do heavy lifting sessions and then follow it up with a cold plunge. That is not something that I would personally recommend, and I haven't seen any science that would indicate that to be the way to go. If anything, we've seen just the opposite to be true. And then if you're an endurance athlete, there's a whole nother way to mix in heat and cold strategically to improve recovery, increase sleep, so that you can be at your best for your endurance sport. But I think where it's going to go is, right now, what we at Sauna House prescribe is basically 3 15-minute saunas and 3 to 5 minute cold plunges per time you come in, and you're doing that in a circuit. So your sauna, rinsing, shower, cold plunging, resting, rehydrating, letting your body warm up naturally is really critical. It's actually one of the ways that you burn the most calories per minute, is the body fighting to rewarm itself. And that's also the stage at which white fat is being turned into brown fat. Brown fat, associated with all-cause mortality being lower. It's a healthy fat, and you can measure it in a DEXA scan. 3 rounds of that per visit is just kind of the common baseline prescription for what I would say lifestyle enjoyment. But truly at Sauna House, we try not to worry about too much about like performance and gains and maximization and extreme wellness culture. We talk a lot more about letting go, not worrying about if you were in the cold plunge for 2 minutes and 25 seconds or 3 minutes and 15 seconds. I think this micro analysis and obsession of the quantified self is truly a mental illness problem, and in a lot of ways for a lot of people. A little too obsessed with yourself.
I've been guilty of that. Gym culture, athlete culture, that 1%er kind of drive. And so I love that you guys have started with a introductory point to this lifestyle that is not the 1%er vibe. It's definitely a welcoming, accessible, anyone could or should do this, and we're going to make you feel better regardless of the science. There's going to be more and more science that comes out on this with specifics and start splitting hairs, like, are we infrared sauning or are we regular sauna, or what's the temperature and how long? And you can get just obsessed with all of the information that's in this space, let alone the fitness space. And just to say to someone, just start and see how you feel. And even just connecting into how do we feel in this moment, and just focus on your breath for the time that you're there, not the phone, and just get connected to noticing, rewinding us back to a place where that shouldn't be a big ask, but it really is for people, including myself. I'm such like a anxious mind. You talk about like this quadrant. Describe that, because I've heard you talk about it, and I think I connect to it, but I want to share that with everybody.
Well, there's 4 states of consciousness, right? When you wake up in the morning and you start wandering around your house, you might notice, I feel anxious because your day is about to start, or you have something coming up, and your mind is kind of like, I need coffee, I need a banana, I need this, I need that. And your mind's, it's very activated, it's very turned on, and it's restless, it's uncomfortable, but your body might feel totally fine. So that's one state of consciousness, where the mind is restless, but the body is at ease. Another state of consciousness is the mind is restless and you have physical pain within your body at the same time. That's what I call the least desirable state. Then you have the opposite, where the body might be in pain, but the mind is perfectly content and relaxed. And then you have the fourth and most desirable state of consciousness, which is the mind and body are both relaxed and content and satisfied and without suffering or pain. It's really difficult to do 3 rounds of sauna and cold therapy and come out and not be in the fourth state of consciousness. People don't realize the difference between states of consciousness and pleasure are often confused, right? And so you might think, I need that coffee, right? Because that'll put my mind into a state where it's happy, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. I'll be grabbing chocolate or sugar or drugs to try and feel pleasure, but really what they're seeking is that fourth state of consciousness. They're just going about it the wrong way. What I would say the right way to get to that place is things like breath work, meditation, consistent exercise, and sauna and cold therapy is just kind of a hack, I would say, because when you do cold water therapy, you release oxytocin and dopamine and norepinephrine, and all of these things make you feel good. But the critical thing to get those, that dopamine, is that you're doing sauna, which is pretty hard. If you do 15 minutes in a hot sauna, that's pretty hard for most people. You're consciously choosing to go in a very uncomfortable environment, which is cold water. You're enduring this challenge socially, which also has other benefits. And then you're coming out, and then you get all this dopamine and norepinephrine and oxytocin. So you're rewiring the dopamine reward system. Meanwhile, in modern day society, we can all just jump to dopamine, right? Like no effort. Here's my dopamine. No effort. Here's my dopamine. And the more you do that, the more you're going to burn out your dopamine reward system, and the more compulsive you're going to be, the less your mind is going to be at ease. And therefore, you're going to really struggle to get into a natural, most desirable state of consciousness.
So do you feel like throughout your day, you kind of move through the different states of consciousness? And is there a certain percentage of your day that you're trying to live in that ideal fourth quadrant?
Yeah, absolutely. People shift in and out of those states of consciousness all throughout the day, because you might be feeling great and then get onto a Zoom call. It's not going great. Now your mind is restless and you feel uncomfortable and upset and anxious. And so that mind can get thrown off just by a glance, right? Like the way someone looks at you can totally change you out of that fourth state of consciousness. So it is something we transition in and out of quite frequently. It can be moments or minutes that make those transitions. So I always tell people just to build awareness around it. Do you feel restless, irritable, and discontent? Is that in your body or is it in your mind? And then what is a remedy that is not pleasure-based remedy? It's mindfulness-based remedy, which I would say is physical exercise or breathwork meditation. Those types of tools are best to recalibrate.
The dopamine recalibration is a total need in society. If you reflect back to starting Sauna House with a newborn and having a first year that then led right into COVID, I would imagine you were kind of craving some like dopamine during that time. How do you have balance in that world where you're just under extreme pressure and then also trying to live this very mindful existence?
I was suffering then. We invested all of our capital into Sauna House. And then our daughter was born 2 months before we opened. She was not a great sleeping kid. And so we were like rotating, and sleep deprivation will crush your ability to have that most desirable state of consciousness. It really is a critical foundational pillar of health. And so my wife and I would split rooms on, you do 2 nights, I do 2 nights, and go back and forth for years. And then we found out we were pregnant with our second daughter like 2 weeks before we shut down the business for COVID, which was great. So I would love to say that I'm sitting here stress-free, hanging out in the fourth state of consciousness all the time, but that's absolutely not the case. But I think I do have a regular meditation practice. I do have a breathwork practice. I do use sauna and cold therapy. I do work out 4 to 6 days a week. And I also say no to a lot of stuff. I keep a very small group of friends in all reality because I talk to so many people for work constantly. I keep a pretty small social circle. One thing I found in a high performance world, right? Not everybody's high performance, and not everybody needs to be high performance either. But I'm someone who grew up a competitive athlete, and I was taught how to turn on all the time, but I was never taught how to recover, never taught this mindfulness, never taught breath work. And your ability to turn on is directly related to your ability to turn off. And so if you're just a performance-based person and you're really not focusing on these other modalities to like turn off your nervous system, well, over time, you're going to reach burnout quicker. You're going to struggle with anxiety more. It's a practice. I'm on the path, and over time, building mindfulness and awareness of where I'm at and what my body needs. You get better and better at it, but I'm not perfect. I'm just another, practicing person.
I think if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, just rewind like a minute and just listen to all of that again, because I'm squarely hustle culture. Like I'm squarely team hustle. But the way that I look at it is like work hard, recover hard. And like the higher I'm driving or the faster I'm going, like the more intentional my recovery needs to be and float, soundproof, like lock it down and just let everything reset. You've kind of been like a lifelong entrepreneur, right? Like in some form or fashion. And so how many years does that go? And do you feel like you have some like tolerance maybe built up to entrepreneurship at this point, or tolerance to risk taking?
Yes and no. I mean, I've always said like I feel most at home when there's risk and speed, which is not like necessarily the greatest thing. And like I work with my coaches on it. It's like, can I feel good chilling out on the beach for an hour? Like I don't even bring a beach chair. Like my wife's always like, pack the beach chairs, get the umbrellas. I'm posting up with a book. I'm like, why do you even bring a chair to the beach? Like I'm going to be swimming or building castles or snorkeling or running or whatever, right? I'm just not wired to relax either. But I will say, the tip for getting started on meditation, just download Sam Harris's Waking Up app and just try and dedicate yourself to the 30-day intro, right? And it's just once a day for 30 days. And your thoughts don't stop, right? Like that's not the point at all. The thoughts will come. It's just, can you observe them and not get lost in them as they come, right? You continually guide yourself back to the noticing of them instead of the wandering with them to wherever they're going. You're talking to one of the most obsessive people, you could have on probably. I think about Sauna House 24/7, 7 days a week in my sleep when I wake up. But I do need to be able to recenter. My kids are an amazing way to do that. I'm very fortunate to have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter who, when I'm with them, I'm either super on or I'm super off. So when I'm home, I don't look at my phone or my computer really at all in front of them. But they really help keep me present, as well as, physical exercise is a great way to like also process the thoughts without hearing anything. I've moved away from listening to podcasts or books on tape while I'm riding bikes or running, and just really trying to listen to nature and be present in the physical realm, which is another great way to sort of turn off but still be doing something. Just let the mind do its thing.
You seem to like need adrenaline almost to relax. Is that a dynamic? Is that a thing?
If I don't exercise for 3 days, I'll feel like so lethargic and like depressed. I'm like 6'4". I'm kind of a bigger guy. I got to warm the engine up slowly. Once I get the engine firing though, I'm like so stoked to be going. Like entrepreneurship, the hardest part of anything is just starting.
So you were an athlete in two pretty intense sports, ice hockey and lacrosse, high intensity, crushing kind of sports. Do you feel like that created a mindset foundation for you that has helped you in entrepreneurship?
From a leadership and a team standpoint, for sure. I was captain of teams growing up. I really loved my coaches. They were some of the best people I got to spend time with growing up. I'm so grateful for the discipline that they put into me, and the focus and the dedication and the total ownership over my own behavior that they instilled in me. So I'm very lucky. But to be honest with you, I think high impact sports, short burst high impact sports are, they're associated with ADHD. They're not exactly like, I have a very difficult time sitting and reading for an hour and focusing deeply. But, in my current role, I do move from thing to thing to thing very quickly. And I don't actually have to do a lot of long, deep work on a regular basis. But I am having to be fully present and deep in a marketing conversation, and then fully present and deep in construction management and build out details. And then I'm well suited, I guess, to go from thing to thing to thing and think about a lot of complex topics in the same day, which, like my business partner, Jen, she's kind of the opposite. She's able to focus for hours and do super deep work. And when she goes from thing to thing, she gets really exhausted and burned out. Whereas I feel like energized by it. Too much, it can burn me out too. Like any leader goes from a lot of different things throughout the day. I mean, like, yeah, literally being like in an employee meeting where someone's lost a parent or something like that, and you're talking to an employee about just hard life things. And then 4 minutes later, I'm talking to an investor. And then right after that, I'm pivoting over to some other weird conversation that's totally unrelated. That can be exhausting. And so I do try and stack different agendas together because I find them to be less taxing and more within the flow of productivity. So I'm trying to learn how to do that. But high impact sports, and head injuries, they really are associated with ADHD. And I think that for me, like, a big part of my story is I'm a recovering alcoholic. And after I stopped playing team sports, I really lost my sense of purpose, my community, and felt isolated and alone. And, alcoholism or drug addiction, it loves you alone. It wants you alone and isolated and alone in your own mind. And yeah, back then, those were really, really dark times, to be honest. And I feel very lucky to have those times behind me. But when I got sober, I had really low self-esteem. I hated myself more than I can even really recall. But one of the older guys who was sober was like, we'll love you until you love yourself. And also, if you're looking for some self-esteem, you can go do esteemable acts. And I was like, that's pretty good advice. And so I started doing community service and working with other people and helping other people. And it really is a thing that I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs talk about enough really, is service toward others, because when you're thinking about your thing all the time and getting what you want all the time in your way and making things work and forcing things through, you're really missing a huge part of self-love and connection to others. Like even doing simple things for other people on a semi-frequent basis is going to just make you feel so much better about who you are in the world.
There's so much that's there, and you've gone through such a journey in entrepreneurship, and I relate so much to the ADHD brain kind of almost being efficient in entrepreneurship in certain ways, but then it is just it's so much of a mind game, more so than it is even an operational game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that you have stacks of tools now that you've developed over the years of entrepreneurship, where you've dialed this in for yourself, and you can also share it with others as almost a buffet of options. Like if you're going to play in this entrepreneurial space, like, have you tried breath work? Have you tried, leading with gratitude and giving to others?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have almost like a 30 option buffet of here's how to refine your mindset so that you could thrive in entrepreneurship. And I think as much as people feel alone and disconnected as a general society right now, I think as entrepreneurs, it's even harder because you are just in a place of all focus going to what you're building, cutting out people who are taking you too far away from what you're building or maybe too far removed from your purpose. And so I think having connectivity between entrepreneurs or even just having education around the fact that entrepreneurship is not a solo game, regardless of even if you're a solopreneur, it still requires team, it still requires support, it still requires coaches, it still requires resources, because no one can do something that's this big. Like you're creating a new category in wellness. And so how can you as a single individual like pick up that weight every single day and carry it without having resources to lean on?
Your network is massively influential, right? Like who you surround yourself with. Entrepreneurship is truly not for everyone either. Being a solopreneur is, to me, even harder. But I think a lot of solopreneurs are actually more balanced people. Like they're able to be more project-based and do their work and like live lifestyle plus solopreneur. I tried that for a little while. Turns out I'm not programmed to be alone or work alone in any way. Some people are just so much better at doing the work. I've gotten better at my job as the company's gotten bigger. I'm unemployable is the truth. Like I have skills in marketing and sales, systems, operations, construction. I know a lot about a lot of things, but I'm not good at sitting there and doing any of them. And so as the company's gotten bigger, I've actually felt more like myself. And, if you are going down entrepreneurship route, just prepared like you're not picking the easy route. Like an easy route is definitely working for a corporation and having a 9 to 5 and being able to turn off. And like that's a great life, truthfully, like so many people live great lives. And like, I mean, I'll go to like a gathering with like my kids and all their friends and parents, and I'll talk to other parents and I'll see people who are living lives differently than the way I do. And I'll like envy them. I'll be like, man, I wish I could like live like that. But then I go home and I go to bed and I wake up the next morning and I'm like, I'm just fundamentally not programmed that way. I've tried to be, but I'm just not. So yeah, you really need to be called toward it because it's going to be hard.
I love that you say you're unemployable, because I definitely feel the same from a standpoint of not being able to execute the things, but not being able to keep my opinions to myself, or not being able to swerve into lanes that aren't mine to swerve into, because I see as an entrepreneur, you almost have to see all the pieces of the business. And so I see everything. And then I'm like, I know what you need to do. And then it's really hard to keep it like bottled up as a a stay in your single lane kind of person.
Yeah, but if you're in the right type of company, they would encourage you to use your voice, right? Like,
Yeah.
even if it's unrelated, so if you're in a really thriving environment that fosters like openness and creativity and strong opinions loosely held, is something I love to hear about. And like one of my favorite things to do is be in a room where we're debating something and having like a junior marketing person like basically show me how I'm an idiot in front of my whole team. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's go your way. That sounds right. What I just said 5 minutes ago with absolute conviction is totally wrong now. Again, that's an environment thing. So I think it's a skill like that you have to see all these different things. And it's just like, who are you around that is willing to allow you to celebrate and question and consider and create growth together through challenging conversations.
So you talk about being a team captain, and now you're starting to franchise the Sauna House. And I know you had an initial perception of franchising. And how have you evolved your perception of franchising now?
Yes, still not my favorite word. I always say that Sauna House is the anti-franchise franchise, meaning that we're doing it very differently than most franchise systems. Not to say that they're bad. We just want to do it our way. That's kind of my and Jen's thing. Like, we're going to choose the investors that we want to align with the vision that we have for a long-term future, and we're going to do it our way. When we started franchising, Jen and I, we talked about the fact that like she's a vivacious learner. Like, she's just so good at learning things and building systems. We were like, hey, it'll be cool. We'll build a team of people, and all of that team, we're all coaches. And we have a coach for construction and real estate management. We have a coach in finance and KPIs and all of that stuff. Then we have coaches in operations and coaches in marketing department. And now we've built a system where we're coaching other entrepreneurs how to open and operate Sauna House facilities, which has been super rewarding, challenging, and just very interesting, honestly. So far, it's going really well. We're still early in that endeavor, but my mindset around franchising has evolved. I always love local ownership. And so like our franchisees are local owners. And I think that local ownership represents the brand in a really great way that sometimes corporate stores have a challenging time doing. Like anything in life, though, you're trading problems, right? If you're doing all corporate stores, you've got one problem. If you're doing all franchise or some franchise and a bunch of corporate, then you've got different problems. But it's been the greatest steepest learning curve of my life the last 2 years.
I love franchising, and I think it's just like anything. Like, you could have even the gym culture. There's certain really negative aspects of gym culture, but then there's the ones that you just like hold on to dearly. And there's so much of franchising that I just am so in love with. And I think the passion of a single unit owner is something that just energizes the whole thing. Of course, they'll tell you if your perception of a marketing tactic is incorrect. They'll be the fastest to tell you that you're wrong to your face in front of the whole, your whole team. But the energy around it and the momentum that it can create if you get the right people onto your team. And so I think that you're approaching it correctly, just from a standpoint of, we're not just going to take anyone who fills out the form, but like we're going to find the right people who are in this for the right reasons. So how do you decide that? Like, do you have a
Yeah.
certain persona that you're looking for? Are there certain
Yeah.
things that you do to review people who are interested in your concept?
Yeah. Yeah. So we handle all of our franchise sales internally. So we're not with the broker networks or any of those things. So I put someone I trust very much right at the front line of vetting candidates. And then they come basically right to me and Jen very early in the process for a quick hello. And then from there, we want to, of course, check that they're financially capable because our franchises are extraordinarily expensive. We don't want to waste their time or our time. So we check that before inviting them to Asheville to spend time with us, which is traditionally called a discovery day, but we don't do them in group settings. We do them all one-on-one. We spend quality time with people. They have to be value aligned with us. They have to care about the long-term vision of the brand, not just the P&L of the brand. Of course, we want that to be good for all of our shareholders, but it can't be the primary driver of why people are coming to chat with us. And if we kind of determine that it is, then we probably don't want to partner with them. But right now we're very fortunate. Almost all of 2025's construction and development cycle is spoken for. We have a couple more units we could build in Q3, Q4 for 25, but really right now I'm already working on 2026, and we definitely believe in having our own corporate stores as well. We've got a lot of corporate store development planned for 2026. I am curious when you talked about you love franchising and you started talking about kind of feedback loops, that is one of my favorite parts too. You have all these different franchise owners that have all these different skill sets and they're bringing them to the table and they're sharing ideas and we're all helping each other try and improve the product, the brand, the experience, the build out costs. We're all working collaboratively together. And I think that network of owners becomes like just so fun for everybody within the brand, including myself. But tell me, what is your personal favorite parts about franchising?
Well, I just feel like if you have one corporate store and then you just sold and opened 3 franchise locations, you just tripled, if not quadrupled, your team size.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of communicating out about your brand, like spreading awareness about your brand, if you can keep everyone aligned, you've just created echo chamber for it to just grow, repeat, and all of a sudden you're out there in a really big way. And my background's marketing, and so I think of it in terms of like, how do we show up on social media and who are our creators in the social media space? And there's just a constant need for content. There's in your world, like a constant need for education. Like if we're going to create a bathhouse segment that somehow like exists side by side with, but separate from recovery space, which is just now getting education around it, like we need to churn out. I know you do your like a ton of blogs and newsletters and things like that. Like you need to have your army of creators. So it's
content.
So it's not just sitting with you and your team centrally. And every time you bring on a new franchise owner, they bring a different skill set to the table. And so they bring a different piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Mm-hmm. And so then you as the orchestrator or the team captain, you see all the puzzles and you're like the puzzle pieces and you're like, okay, Charleston, South Carolina owner, you're really good at, or you have a background in blah, blah, blah. And like you tag them in. And I think that's maybe an atypical way to franchise. Like a lot of franchises wait until they're ready to just have everything buttoned up and just push it down and know it must be this. But franchise owners, as being entrepreneurial people, I think they love to be in the build with you. And so being able to dish work in more directions is always good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's really fun to see the value that different people provide. And it was funny you said Charleston, because our Charleston franchise owner, she's an amazing woman. And, when she started her first business, you weren't even legally allowed to get a loan as a woman in America, right?
What was that? 1988 is the mile marker. It's in my lifetime. It's crazy that's the timeline.
I know. And now she has 275 employees of her other brand, and she's been in the wellness world in different capacity for all that time, and her knowledge and experience around so many different things. Like she's just become one of my closest friends, colleagues, that I have, and I'm so fortunate to have her in Charleston. But she came on and did like a whole conversation around laundry with me in front of the other franchisees because, do you do your laundry on site or do you outsource it? And the conversation went all up in that, and it was really fun Q&A for us, and I think it provided a ton of value to all the other partners.
And for the rest of time, she's going to be your go-to resource if ever there's a question on laundry.
For sure. She owns her own laundromat.
So you have, what is it? Bonita Springs, Florida, Charleston, South Carolina, Denver. What are some other markets that you either have in development or that you're looking at where you're like, this market would just do great with a sauna house?
Yeah, let me, I actually have like a spreadsheet now because I forget them all.
I want the spreadsheet, but I also want your Christmas list. Like what would be your, I really want X market.
Yeah, we'd really like to break into the Northeast. Like I grew up near Philadelphia and Abington. That's a phenomenal market. We'd love to get up to the Northeast. I'd love to get into Boston market and Philadelphia market specifically. In the Northeast, we would like to do a little bit of stuff in California, which we have some stuff going on now. We have a great franchise partner and team down in Austin, Texas, working on 3 stores. And then Denver has a partner that's working on a store, and corporate is trying to work on some stores in Denver. So Denver's very important to me. It's a horribly hard place to get projects done. The cost to construct is high. Permitting timelines are horrible. It has high real estate costs, really high triple net taxes. So there's Denver and Austin are 2 difficult markets, but they're also very important markets to make progress in. So those are very top of mind for me right now. In the brand right now, we have 3 stores going into the Charleston market, 3 stores going into the Raleigh market. 1 in each of those markets will come online in early 25. And then Greenville, South Carolina will come on in 25. Knoxville will come on in early 25. We have corporate stores opening in Durham, North Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina next in less than 60 days, ideally. We'll see if they get done on time. And then we have Bonita Springs, Florida. That was our very first franchise partner that came on. Shout out to Robert and Gwen. I think that's it right now. So
so we need a Northeast. We need a Northeast franchisee. We need a California franchisee. Is there anything else that you're working on that you have a need for that you want to shout out, put into the universe, and maybe someone who's listening might be able to chime in?
There's all like my secret markets, and it's like there's like these small town pockets that I also care a lot about, but I don't necessarily want to put out into the public world what I'm trying to do there. But there are some really cool towns that are similar to Asheville, North Carolina, that we would like to get into those towns. But nothing yet in them, but there's a couple more. But again, like with where we are as a company right now, the key word for this year was execute, right? Last year, the word was sell and get deals done. We did a great job at that. This year, we were like, let's execute, because our build outs are so big and expensive and complicated and hard. Lots of power, lots of water, drains everywhere, tile everywhere. Like these are not easy things to build. And so we're very focused on the success of our current shareholders, and we're focused on strategies and getting our people plan correct and our capital plan correct so that the end of 2025 has maybe 1 to 3 more stores in the queue. But then we're really thinking about what do we want to accomplish in 2026, because that's kind of where we are.
I love that you have this all mapped out and that you're at least a year ahead, if not 2 years ahead. Is there anything that is top of mind with you that we haven't talked about that you want to throw out into the world?
Well, I would love to talk about actually one thing, which is our partnership with 1% for the Planet. I think we did a unique thing there. I was passionate about giving back to the environment because essentially Sauna House uses lots of power and lots of water. That's directly supplied by our environment. And so we use compostable cups and compostable materials. We've got a pretty streamlined business model, and so we're not producing a lot of trash, and we have compost services, but in our service benefits humanity, right? It's designed to help people, but our business needs to give back. And so how I see it is like our product serves customers and it helps people, but we need to come full circle. And so we partnered with 1% for the Planet, and what we did was we put that inside of our brand fund. And so typically franchises have a brand fund that goes toward marketing and brand awareness. And so we keep the entire brand 1% for Planet compliant by layering that into our brand fund. And then all of our partners are able to direct their cash into local approved environmental nonprofits. So for instance, here in Asheville, North Carolina, we donate cash and community service hours to Asheville Greenworks. Our Raleigh partner will partner with someone else. And in Durham, we've partnered with the Eno River Basin. Yeah, I think that that's going to be really cool. And I don't think maybe other brands are doing that. I think it's a very different thing that we're doing. My goal is to work and stay within my company for as long as possible. I'm not trying to sell my company. I love this industry. I love this space. And I want to build communal bathing spaces for the next 20 years of my life at least. And if we can accomplish what I believe we can accomplish, then we're going to be donating an insane amount of cash every year to environmental nonprofits, which I'll be really proud of. In the future, we'll be designing certain spaces to be built extraordinarily sustainably. But if we're at $2.5 to $5 million projects mostly right now, there will be more stuff that gets more expensive. But when you do a ground up new build, it allows for a lot more sustainability to be thought into the project. And so I'm just really excited to have that opportunity. And I really appreciate all of our customers for giving me that opportunity to build something that serves humanity, but also then has a giving arm to celebrate nature for providing us water and power so that we can flourish in the way that we do today in modern society.
I love that you're connected to a greater purpose, and I appreciate you introducing all of us to everything that you're doing over at Sauna House. If you guys are listening to this, I'm going to link all of the Sauna House links and socials and websites into the show notes, and you'll also be able to learn more about Andrew from the show notes. But Andrew, thank you so much for being with us today on the Society Pod.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much, Jessica. Thank you for having me on.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.